Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Early, and I'm interviewing Mike Tikkanen. Mike Tikkanen is the founder or co-founder of Kids at Risk Action, a program dedicated to raising public awareness about child abuse. I've been on Mike's board for, I guess, a couple years now. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to interview Mike to get a sense of how he got into this business in the first place. And I'm going to take myself off the screen because I'm not really that relevant here and just feature Mike. So hide myself. So, Mike, take me back to whenever it was that you first became aware of or interested in children that are having a tough time. How'd that happen?
I was in a Toastmaster group, and a young woman told me about her time as a Casa Guardian ad litem, and she said, "I can't do this anymore, but it really needs to be done. Would you think about doing that for me? Take my place?" And at 40 years of age, I thought, yeah, I could do anything. Like, sure, certainly. I got in and I found out how hard that work was, and I stuck with it. It became a big part of my life. I'm glad I'm doing it. I'm not active anymore in the CASA program, but that's how I started CARA to carry that work forward.
And CASA is
Court-appointed special advocate for children that have been terribly abused and removed by the courts from their birth home.
okay. Now, why do you think she asked you?
I got that sappy look on my face, I guess. I don't really know, but I couldn't say no, and I'm glad I
Uh-huh.
did.
Okay, so you got involved and you said that you found out how hard it was.
Well, think now in terms of an office, there's 500 volunteers at the time. I was one of them. And I would come in and get cases in the downtown office, which was busy and disorganized. I shouldn't say disorganized, but overwhelmingly full of paperwork and people running around. Yeah, it's in a court building. And so there's volunteers in court coming and going, and all the kids and all the people and parents involved. And I thought that the woman that ran the program and handed out the stuff, the cases, was singling me out to take really bad cases. But in the end, she wasn't. My first case was 8 children. My second case was turned out to be 7. Uh, and the levels of abuse were so horrid. Things just kept it just like this can't be. I refuse to believe that I live in a city that has this much of that kind of thing. And here we are a lot of years later, and I'm looking back at it and I'm still angry. It's not right. But I now know statistically and data wise that it's absolutely true and it's worse in most other states.
What was the next step that got you moving in the direction of the book?
Actually, I came to David Strand was the co-founder of CARA, and he was coming out of CASA as I was coming in. And Joe McCarthy, these are board members now, and they're both dead. They passed
Okay.
away over the years, but they both talked about that. David Strand, wrote a PhD thesis called "Nation Out of Step," and I asked him if I could use his international data to write the book "Invisible Children." He said absolutely. And Joe McCarthy, who's a marketing guy, uh, he said, "Yeah, you got to have a book. You're going to do public speaking on this. You're going to get the word out. You're going to be effective. You got to have a book." So he guided me into the process of doing that. And I'm so glad he did.
Okay, now you mentioned public speaking. So it sounds like you were speaking first.
Right.
How did that happen?
Well, I was just compelled. So public speaking was a way to get it out of my head and into a crowd. I feel sorry for the people in the rooms because I just basically exposed the brutality of what I was seeing. And at that time, going back now, that is the late 90s, early 2000s, people really were not aware of it. I went to the state house and I talked to legislator after legislator after legislator, and they were unaware and they didn't really, there was very, very little knowledge.
I want to go back again to the public speaking. Where did you speak first, or at least as best you can
Oh,
remember?
churches, rotaries, business groups. I went anywhere, anytime, anyhow. I really wanted to do that.
you like went full bore into it?
I did. Yeah, actually, the ironic part is once I started that, I was a rarity. I got a phone call. This is true. I got a phone call from the United Nations and a woman putting together the youth assembly, the second or third youth assembly. I can't remember, but anyways, and she said, "Will you come to New York and speak at the UN?" And I said, "Of course I will." And held a workshop that was very well attended from people all over the world. And that was I can't tell you how that changed my life because I had them tell me about what it's like in South Africa and what it's like in the rest of the world. And then at the end of that talk, the women from America lined up to talk to me on the way out and tell me why they quit being in social work. And the stories, I mean, I have so many stories.
Uh-huh. How did the trajectory of the book come up?
Well, once I started to do public speaking and I asked my friends and colleagues, what do I do to be good at this? They said, if you want to be good at this, keep writing. That's when we were very fortunate early on to get a website developer to develop a website for us and start. I love to write. I'm an English major. It's one of my strengths. And by the time I wrote the book, I'd written hundreds of articles in the Star Tribune and all that stuff. And so the book was a pretty simple book of my history in the child protection system, and it was meant to be optimistic and give helpful hints about how we can solve some of these problems.
Let's go back to when you first became a guardian ad litem. What year was that?
96.
How long were you actively a guardian ad litem?
12 years active, and some of the kids stuck around for another couple years.
Do you have any idea how long a person typically serves as a guardian ad litem? How long?
I'm going to say 3 to 5 years in there somewhere I'm going to say 5 years. I'm going to guess the average is 5 years, and that they've got plenty of people up at the 15-year mark, the 10-year mark.
So you did it for 12 years, and you say the average is 3 to 5 years. So you rank as an old timer in your service. And you said it's volunteers last longer than paid staff. How long do you think paid staff lasts?
I think they're at 2 to 3 years. Right now, it's particularly difficult. The turnover is really high. And frankly, this is the embarrassing part, the painful part, because the learning curve is probably 2 years to get into this business of working with really troubled people with really big mental health issues, because trauma is attached to every child you work with.
I've known Mike, or I've known you for a long time. And I know that when I first met you, you were very busy with your own business, which I believe was the Packard Group. And it was all about participating in the buying and selling of companies. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, but you're not doing that anymore. What happened that had you go full time with Kara?
Well, it's the old adage, you put your toe in the water and pretty soon the body just kind of follows it in. And some years ago, then I just quit taking new customers. And this is, running a small nonprofit's a full-time job. There's no way around that.
Well, and I know for you it's a calling.
Yeah. Yeah. Work as a child protection volunteer in the system, and you get to know those kids and you realize how many of them there are and how unaware the public is. It really is. And it plays to a strength I have of writing and speaking. And, it's something we hope we can accomplish as an organization to bring much more exposure to what this grim reality is.
So I want to go back to something you said about talking to congressmen, representatives and senators in the state. What had you do it?
It just occurred to me that legislative change was required. If we didn't if these children have no rights, and at first I realized, and I did some research in my writing and stuff for the book, that the children in America are the only children in the world that have no standing in court. They have no rights. At some point, it just became really clear that that the only way change would happen is that the state house with state regulations that made it a crime to abuse your child. So I
Okay.
went to the state house to talk to people about that kind of thing.
What was the reception, especially at the
Oh,
beginning?
really cold, except for one I wish I remember her name now, but she was a Hmong woman and she was quite concerned with what I said. Yeah. And I never gave up. And by the way, today we have 70 legislators following us on our weekly email. I'm kind of proud of that. It's taken a while.
So when did you create the nonprofit?
And we created it in 2003.
Did you have a board before that?
We did. We started in 2000.
So when did Damon join you?
Well, he was always my advisor, and I just leaned on him at one point to join the board, become part of the board. And to be honest with you, I don't remember when that was. So Damon's been a right arm on a lot of things for over 20 years. I mean, just you too, I mean, it's just forever.
And how about Greg?
We've been having conversations for at least 10 years, and he was been a donor for that length of time also. And it could be 15.
Okay, Mike, I'm going to call that a wrap.
All right. Thank you, my friend. I very much enjoyed our interview.